Now we look at the Quranic story, which is the thing of what our talk, Sidna Khidr, the story of Sidna Musa, because we have to understand that to get to the third level. Now Sidna Musa, alayhi salam, even though he was a prophet, alayhi salam, suffered from an inability to take guidance from someone who he could not recognize precisely because of his own idea of who he was, the face in the mirror. Even though Sidna Khidr even made it clear to him from the start that he wasn't going to able to take the guidance. To take the guidance, there are 3 steps that are necessary. First, put everything else behind you. Become a true seeker. If you're hanging on to something else, if you're a skeptic, forget it. You're never going to make it. You'll sit there till you're 70 years old. If Allah gives you the life, or 80 years old, you'll never make it. All you're going to have is your skepticism. Is he? Is he not? Can he? Can he not? Will he? Will he? Won't he? He loves me? He loves me not? He loves me? He loves me not? No. Forget about it. Forget about yourself. That's what he's saying. That's the first step. Second step, to go where you have to go and do whatever you have to do to find the truth. No matter what. This man, he met a man in Libya before all this nonsense. He met a man. Oh. The man held up the mirror. He was his Suzanne. He wanted to follow him. He told him, Sidi, I want to follow you. He says, I'm leaving in the morning. He said, I got a wife. I got kids. I'm leaving in the morning. What you going to do? You're going to go? You're going to stay. Here's the man. Here's the mirror. Here's yourself. He showed you. And he's leaving in the morning. If you want it, you better leave with him. You better go. Because if you don't go, you won't know. You got to be prepared to do it. Step 2. Third step, hang out. Learn to hang out. My sheikh used to read the newspaper for hours on end. I couldn't even read the newspaper because I couldn't read Arabic at that point. I know what he was reading about. He had a friend, a doctor, and they used to talk about the news all the time. I don't know what they're talking about. Doesn't matter. Hang out. Give up yourself. Give up thinking of what I want and how it's going to be and what it's going to happen like that. And give up thinking you don't know how it's going to be. Just hang out with him. Spend time. Rumi writes again in his Mathnawi, those spiritual window shoppers who idly ask, how much is that? And then they say, oh, I was just looking. They pick it up 100 times and then they put it down. They're shadows with no capital. What is spent is love and 2 eyes that are wet with weeping. But those who walk into a shop and then their whole lives pass suddenly by in the moment in the shop, even if you don't know what you want, buy something now. Anyway, just to be part of the flow. Start a huge, foolish project like Sidna Nuh alayhi salam. It doesn't make any difference what people think of you. And Alexander Graham Bell said, sometimes we stare so long at a door that is closing that we're too late to see the one that's open. So in this second stage, one travels under the guidance of one's sheikh from the limited and manifest horizon of one's limited and limiting self towards the supreme horizon, or as Sayyid Haidar bin Amuli called it, Ufuq al-Ala, the high overarching horizon. Horizon in this context means as far as you can see, what you can imagine anything to be. When one is stuck in one's limited self and only can see the mirror in the bathroom, you're stuck. What happens when we take on these nafil prophetic practices is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us, as He promised us in the hadith of Qudsi, that He gives us the eyes by which we can see. Eyes by which we can see. He gives us mercy through His love And through these eyes by which he can see, we can see more than what we could see, and we see the larger horizon of things. Because he gives us to see by what we've done. The world is the same if you climb the mountain, but you can see more of it. So the Sheikh does this for you through a combination of giving you practices, many of which are part of an inherited storehouse of the practices of the particular tariqah to which he belongs, counseling, guidance, all of these things, form of tarbiyah, which turns to bring about, inshallah, to make a permanent change in your being. Who is the Sheikh? He is the one who has put his hand in the hand of the one, who has put his hand in the hand of the one, who has put his hand, and his hand is in the one whose hand is over many generations, in the hand of Ali alayhi salam, who put his hand in the hand of the seal of the prophets, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And I mention Ali specifically alayhi salam in this context because it is he of whom the Prophet has said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, I am the city of knowledge, and Ali is its door, and nobody enters the house except through the door. And as Allah says in Surah Baqarah, enter houses by their doors and beware of Allah so that hopefully you will be successful. What I say has nothing to do with Sunni, nothing to do with Shia at all. Nothing. Ali was not a Sunni and Ali was not a Shia. Ali was the cousin of the Prophet ﷺ. And one does not understand who he was. Many people, neither Shia nor Sunni, understand who he was. All the time the Khulafa Rashidun, may Allah be pleased with them, were doing their work. He was their consultant for so many legal and military matters. Look it up and understand what he did. But during this period, what was he really doing? He was teaching. They gave him a respite for teaching. And during this time, he did this through the creation of circles for learning, the halakha, in which he gathered people from what would be all over the Muslim world to impart to them religious and spiritual knowledges. And these halakat, these circles, in turn, were surrounded by angels who called out to the Creator to tell him that those people were there and remembering him in a gathering. In the Hadith Qudsi, Allah says on the tongue of the Prophet ﷺ, those that remember me in their heart, I remember them in my heart. And those that remember me in a gathering, that make mention of me, I remember them and make mention of them in a gathering far better than theirs. Well, Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala anhu says, Allah has angels who travel the highways and the byways seeking out the people of dhikr. And when they find people making the dhikr of Allah, remembering Allah, the mighty, the majestic, they call out to one another, come to what you hunger for. And they enfold the dhakireen with their wings and stretch up to the lowest heaven. And the Lord who knows best says, what are my slaves saying? And they say, they're glorifying you. They're proclaiming your greatness. They're praising you. They're magnifying you. And Allah says, have they seen me? And they said, no, by Allah, they have not seen you. And He says, how would it be if they were to see me? And they said, oh, if they were to see you, they would worship you, magnify you, and glorify you even more intensely. And He said, what are they asking for? And they said, they're asking you for the garden. And they said, and Allah says to them, did they see it? And they said, no, by Allah, we've not seen it. They've not seen it. And He says, how would it be if they were to see it? And He says, well, if they were to see it, the angels say, they would yearn for it even more strongly and seek it for more assiduously, and they would have a greater desire for it. And He says, what are they seeking refuge from? They're seeking refuge from the fire. And He says, have they seen it? He says, no, they haven't seen it. How would it be if they were to see it? He says, well, if they saw it, they would flee from it even harder and have an even greater fear of it. And He says, I testify to you, Allah speaking, I have forgiven them. And one of the angels says, among them is so-and-so, Fulan, Fulan. He's not one of them. He just came to get something he needed. He said, is he sitting with them? Yes, they're sitting. They are sitting, and the one sitting in them will not be disappointed. This is Muttafaqun alayh, agreed upon by all. So for 24 years, during which the first of the three Khulafa oversaw the affairs of the growing Muslim community, Sidna Ali alayhi salam was teaching the members of the community in the deen, and this teaching is what we call tasawwuf. That's where it comes from. That's where it begins. That is, we can see this through all the chains of transmission. With the exception of one line, all of them trace themselves back to Sidna Ali. And then Allah says, listen carefully. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ati'u Allah wa ati'u Rasuluhu wa ulil amri minkum. O you who believe, obey Allah, obey the Messenger, and obey those among you who are invested with authority. The people of dunya, the people, whether they're Shia or they're Sunni, they'll tell you, those are our imams, those are our Khulafa Rashidun. They're not the people of authority. I tell you, they are not the authority. Neither the Mubaraks of this world, or the Salihs of this world, or the Gaddafis of this world, or any of those leaders, are they the authority. They are not Ulul Amr. Ulul Amr, who are Ulul Amr? They asked the Prophet ﷺ, who are Ulul Amr? He says, those who inherit from me. Those are Ulul Amr. And those Dhalimun are not people who have inherited from the Prophet ﷺ. Prophet ﷺ warned us. He said, there will come a time for my people when nothing will remain of Islam except its name. And those people who call themselves by this name, they will be the people who are the furthest away from it. And nothing will remain of the Quran except its outward form. The masajid will be filled with people and they will be empty of guidance. And the religious leaders, and he uses the word in the hadith, the fuqaha of that day, they will be the most evil religious leaders under the heaven. And sedition and dissension, yani fitna, will go out from them and return to them. This is the reality of the situation. According to At-Tabari, the Prophet ﷺ announced at a dinner to which he invited at the time when Allah told him, go and warn your family, he invited all of the Banu Hashim to come to him. This, you can find this story in 74, Surah 74 in ayats 1 and 2. And he told him to warn and inform his people that whoever assisted him in his invitation to call people to Islam would become his brother, would become his trustee, would become his successor. And only Ali, alayhi salam, who was 13 or 14 years old at that time, stepped forward to help him. This invitation was repeated 3 times to everybody there, but only Ali was the person who had answered the Prophet ﷺ, who finally declared this was his brother, this was his inheritor, this was his vice-regent. So if you ask who are Ulul Amr, that's the man who is Ulul Amr. And who are Ulul Amr from him? The ones who follow and put their hands in his hand. And I tell you, this has nothing to do with Sunni and nothing to do with Shia. These are the people who take from him directly. And still, though when he did that, Abu Talib, when he did that, Abu Lahab, he laughed at him. And he told Abu Talib, oh, you're going to follow your own son? They laughed at him. And they're laughing now, and they're laughing today, and they still call us the same names as they called us then, but it doesn't matter. He said, oh my people, the Prophet said, alayhi salam, I am a human being. I am about to receive a message from my Lord. This was at the time of the end of his life. I am about to receive a message from Allah, and I will bid farewell to you, but I am leaving among you the 2 weighty things, the Thaqalain, the Book of Allah, in which there is right guidance and light, so hold fast to the Book of Allah and adhere to it. And he exhorted us to hold fast to the Book of Allah. And he said, the second are the members of my household, my itra, and I remind you of your duties to the members of my family. And this statement was made when the Prophet ﷺ was coming back from his last pilgrimage in 632, and the Ghadr al-Khum, and then this is in Sunni and Shia sources, and this is reported by all of them, including that he said, whoever I am the Mawla, whoever I am the master, then Ali is his Mawla. That's what Sufi people say. Ali is our Mawla. That is who our Mawla. Do we respect the Khulafa Rashidun? Of course we respect them. Do we respect the Imams? Of course we respect them. We respect them all. But who? Who is the one who takes us out of that? The person who is connected like that. That's why he says, don't enter the house except by the door. That's the reality of the situation. And when Allah says, Nuran ala nur, yahdi Allah li nurihi man yasha, light upon light, Allah guides to his light whom he chooses. He's talking about that. He's showing how that light came down from that time to this time, through all of those people to us who received that light. Not the light of the dunya. We're not interested in being leaders. We're not interested in being the chiefs of the world. We're not interested in that. That doesn't interest us. That's more of numbers.